Hey, what's going on, everybody? And thanks for joining us again. We are live. It's Tuesday. It's election day. And we've got a lot on the docket. Starting off with something obscure, bringing news from other corners of the world. There are elephants dropping dead in Africa. What a travesty. Something we got to talk about. Oof. And the Trump circus, the circus of the Trump trial begins. And then finally, like I said, it's election day. I brought out of the Rethink Tank archives one of our first merch products, the Joe Biden Frax t-shirts. This shirt was so perfect for the 2020 election because I had Democrats and Republicans alike buying it. One, because Democrats are oftentimes uneducated voters. They don't even know what the hell they're doing. Because of that, they didn't realize that this was a shirt trolling Joe Biden. They just saw, because he's got, the China lettering, and he's just like, oh my God, that's my man. Little did they know, if you did your political homework and you were an educated voter, you would realize that this was trolling the fact that the dead guy literally did not know his stance on fracking. He would go to Pennsylvania and he'd be like, I am going to bring it back to you, folk. You're my home folk. I'm a Pennsylvania man. And then the second he'd leave, he'd be like, burn fracking. Not literally, get rid of it. And all of his constituents were like, whoa, wait, what about us, the working man? He said, you don't matter to me. So if you were in the political realm, there was a huge conflict between where's he at on fracking, and the idiots that voted for him didn't care where he was at on fracking. That all being said, again, it's election day, so towards the end of the show here, when we get into the final topic here, we're going to be getting updates from Brian. He's going to be tapping us into the live feed with the county here. So yes, for our local Ohio voters, but also everybody else, we're going to get an update, but then also talk about some of the issues. That being said, let me introduce my co-host, my good friend, David Cunningham. Thanks for joining me again, David.
Oh, as always, it's good to be here on this nice election day here in Ohio and probably everywhere else here across the country. I'm Don. We had a very patriotic show today. I might bring this puppy out here every election or so just because it just fits. It fits so well here.
The American Fonzie.
Oh, absolutely. Also, not how you're supposed to be wearing an American flag. This is technically illegal if you go by the laws of our own country. So that's a little, breaking the law here. But anyway, I don't think, again, we can't do this show without our boy, Brian, the man behind the keyboards back here, are actually our political analyst right now.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? BC Mall here. Get your snowboarder passes if you still can. I don't know. Are
they starting to dry up now?
Yeah. Well,
the early bird pass special is behind us.
Well, the passes, once the season starts, it cuts. You can't buy a season pass.
Well, do you know when does the season start? That might be good for our audience here.
It might start today. It might start next week.
It's going down mud.
But it's across the country. So when that starts, it's over.
Sweet.
Okay. All right. Well, get your passes, everyone.
Start the show.
Boom. All right. There's a mystery in Africa. Elephants dropping dead. And the scientists are unraveling it as we speak. Why I brought this article in today, because there's a lot of interesting aspects to this. Yeah, we'll get to the story. Yeah, of course. You're super interested in what's going on with these African elephants. They're dying. Oh, my God. I hope that doesn't happen to me and my elephants. So, of course, it gets the click. And you're diving into it because CNN is a reputable source of information. Why would you not trust the CIA psyop that is CNN? So, of course, I click in. Ironically, David, not even knowing where I'm going with this, he ironically found the same article, read the same article. So you dive in and it goes, 35 African elephants in northwestern Zimbabwe dropped dead under baffling circumstances in 2020. I don't know if you realize it is 2023, almost 2024. That being said, 11 of the massive herd animals died within a 24-hour period. The quote, they died over a very narrow window. That's one of the most enigmatic parts of the whole puzzle. that many animals dying in quite close areas together, but not right next to each other over such a narrow space of time really racks one's mind and is rather unique. Certainly in this part of the world, said Dr. Chris Foggin, a veterinarian at Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust in Zimbabwe, who is the co-author of the study on the cause of the deaths. Earlier that same year, about 350 elephants in neighboring northern Botswana also had died suddenly over the course of 3 months. We have an epidemic. Officials and experts were initially at a loss to explain the die-offs, which occurred among Africa's biggest population of elephants. Of course, the knee-jerk reaction is considering poaching, poisoning, or even a drought. It turns out it's a bacterial infection killing these elephants in Zimbabwe. And this analysis also showed, published in October, from the Journal of Nature Communications, it showed evidence of infection by little-known bacterium called Biscard taxon 45 that caused blood poisoning. The deaths took place as food and water resources dwindled during the dry season, forcing the elephants to travel increasing distances to look for water and to forage. So you go deeper into this article, and one of the things we start parsing apart is it very quickly pushes the narrative, because we're seeing language of like the drought, and there's a high population density balanced with a severe heat wave coming through. Now, ignore the fact that it's El Nino now, and also ignore the fact that we're talking about 3 years ago and also not right now, but the narrative being pushed in the article is, doggone it, it's the burning of plastic once again, and you not recycling is killing elephants over there in Africa. That being said, okay, what is going on here? One of the things that they found for us is this is what I love and why I found such interest in this article. Okay, I've now gone to the 5th and final page. This is also the 7th section of the article. So leading through this, they're presenting a story and intertwining all of their climate change propaganda and everything but an autistic girl from Europe to really drive the message home. And the one thing, like every article that gets you triggered and got the click, at the very end, they go, oh, whoops, yeah, it actually wasn't any of that shit. It was a bacteria. So that's where my gripe is. When you go on Facebook and it says, you know, the example I always use, and it dates me because it puts us back at the most important election, back to 2016, before we went into a nuclear war, because of Obama. When you were scrolling and wanted to learn about our relations with North Korea and why it's such a pitfall, I come across these articles. And on Facebook, it would say approximately a 2-minute read, approximately a 3-minute read. If you are in any way educated, you should have the wherewithal to realize that our global arena relationship, the economic relationship with North Korea and the rest of the globe, is not a 3-minute read. Sorry to break it to you, my lazy political analyst. This stuff takes work. You need to go through it. So what am I noticing? I'm noticing a culture that is trying to boil down very important subjects so they're easily digestible. At the same time, it allows them to intertwine any BS and narrative they want with it, and then just default everything at the end, like present a message, and then at the very end add, oh yeah, well, what we really meant is this, or what the truth is this. Because one, they know even though it's a 3-minute read, you aren't even going to invest the 3 minutes. You're never going to get to the fact that we lied in the title. But then we also have come to realize that we're such educated populace that we are just title surfers. And as long as I can find an article whose title pushes the narrative I'm trying to support, then that's all I want. And I wipe my hands of it and move on. I hit share on the social media and I move on because I did my part in the world. So that being said, David, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this bacteria epidemic in Africa. But then also, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on my perspective when it comes to this propaganda BS.
Well, when you mentioned this topic here to me, this was interesting. It's like, ooh, this is weird. Or we're already having trouble keeping elephants alive and not being poached. So having them just drop dead. In mystery, intrigue. I really started off pretty well as actually an interesting article. Like, ooh, what's going on? Then I do read, oh, this is from 2020. Okay, well, boy, I thought I would hear about this more because that seems like a lot of bad things happen in 2020. This was definitely should have been like, ooh, elephants dying, murder hornets, the hurricanes, all sorts of crazy things going on. Not to mention the things as people were doing to each other. But so you add that on top. So like, okay, it already dates itself. So I'm thinking like, what are you bringing this old topic here for? Then I look, this is a 2023 topic presented at 9 a.m.
Right, today.
So okay, all right. So I go through and I read, and yeah, you're right. It does paint a picture of global warming, droughts, all sorts. What could be causing this? Now it does. I think to give the article a little more credit, does eventually. I'd say about the last third of the article does go into more detail about what's going on and why it's impacting it. And that sucks. Again, we got these majestic creatures out here just dropping dead. And I do feel there was one part of the article where they couldn't figure out how why these animals are dropping dead because of bureaucracy and how hard it was to get permits to do tests on these creatures. Like, buddy, we got 350 elephants dropping dead here within about a year. We need to kind of work on this and figure out if this is like a real big deal.
Don't mind the husks. Just take the dead body and investigate them. It shouldn't be that much work to take a dead body and investigate it, right? It's not like, okay, the second you're starting to make purses out of the leather, I'm watching you make a lamppost out of the tusk. Okay, now you're a poacher. This is a crime. I've got something worth investigating. But there shouldn't be much of an argument to, let me actually, even better, because this will be a good transition too. So as you said, the back third really does give more detail and illuminates what's truly going on here. So Bisgard taxon 45, this bacterium, has previously been associated with tiger and lion bite wounds in humans. The bacteria have also been found in chipmunks and healthy captive parrots. The microorganism, which does not have an official name, is closely related to another more common bacterium known as Pasteurella multicita, whatever, I don't know, which can cause the same blood poisoning in other animals, including Asian elephants. The bacterium was also linked to mass deaths of 200,000 critically endangered antelopes in 2015. Finally, the researchers at that veterinarian hospital in Zimbabwe have found monitoring wildlife in the area for presence of the bacteria, but no further elephant deaths as a result of Bisgard taxon 45 have been confirmed since 2020. So one of the things I was going to say just before diving into the science is going, well, what else are you going to do besides letting scientists look at it? Leave the animals out there for the wilderness to eat? And then what do we get to? Oh, it was poisoning lions and tigers too. So maybe you shouldn't leave the elephants, just the poisonous elephants with poison blood, just out there for all the carnivores that lick their chops at blood to eat. Especially when lions and tigers were also victims of this problem. Not in the last 3 years. That's a thing we're not going to acknowledge. But something that's totally, I don't know, to me, I am reading an article in 2023 and again, what do we operate on? We operate on fear. What gets your attention? The things that are tragic. So what do? We take something and 3 years old and repurpose it because obviously, besides Trump and the elections, it's a slow news day. So what do? Conjure up a false beast that has been, it's not just elephants, it's impact.
Waiting here, but it let me tell you what, great headline. So, absolutely great headline.
So let me ask you this. Do you think this is in any way, I just want to have a separate, because you're the balance to me and oftentimes you show me the light. I'm curious, is there anything redeemable about CNN anymore? Like at this point, we have written off every person with Fox News in their if you have it on in your living room, we can put you in a basket to deplore. But there's zero conversation about how, okay, I will trigger somebody by saying MSNBC is just as bad, if not worse. But there's maybe a little subjectiveness in there. Objectively speaking, is there anything redeemable about CNN anymore? And how can you not convince me, knowing Project Mockingbird, how can you convince me that's not an arm of our agency of 3 letters, which I will not say?
Well, I guess my defense here on CNN, because I always seem to, boy, you need to have a hill behind me. I'm always defending these.
Them and Disney adults.
Jesus. So anyway, let me do my best here to defend CNN. So they're not as bad as MSNBC. They wear it a little more on their sleeves over there. It's I think the issue with Fox News, kind of making that parallel, is there really isn't a whole lot of. There's one major conservative kind of news network and like news empire, and that's Fox. That's really about it. Where you have CNN, NBC, you can maybe say ABC. Most of the networks kind of have a left leaning, but I definitely CNN kind of leans obviously a little bit more left, and NBC kind of keeps going there. Where I think they're biased. Absolutely are biased, but they do put a good story behind most of what they do. I like the production quality. In fact, if you've watched, it's
almost as good as rethinking, I'll tell you that.
If you do watch most of the shows, I think where they go off the rails is their opinion commentators when they start talking off the cuff. That's where
it's not news. That's a podcast.
That's where you see their true colors, and I think that's where most of the notoriety from CNN comes from. However, if you do watch just the regular news, like the midday news broadcast, when they're just saying the news, it's fine. It's okay. It's nothing too bad. I think the graphics package is they're pretty good.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
This is just, I'd like to pick your brain in considering developing legal policy, right?
All right.
Okay. You have pointed out something where the news tends to diverge away from news and into opinion.
Yep.
But they're still branding themselves as news. So we as a society have determined in the medical field, in the legal field, in even flipping real estate or fishing, you need to have a license to show that you're qualified to be doing that. Now, fishing's its own thing, right? That's just so we can conserve wildlife, create revenue to preserve these things, but then also monitor so it doesn't get overfished and become a problem. In the other realms I mentioned, the majority of those are used to indicate expertise, sufficiency. You have reached a standard level that makes you competent enough to declare yourself as this position, right? So a doctor, you can't just we're at a shopping center in a corner of a good intersection. I can't just throw up a lemonade stand and say hernia surgeries for $5, right? Just can't do that.
Yeah.
In fact, I have to be legitimized. I can't. You can ask Brian legal advice, and Brian can give you any legal advice, ignorant legal advice he wants, because he's an ignorant layman that can give that to you. The second you get a law degree, it would be illegal for me to give you any legal advice, period, without passing the bar and then taking $1 from you. Okay. Right? That's why you see that. Like I have to not only just be an expert in the field, licensed by the state, but then I also have to be contracted by you, and that there's an agreement that I'm accepting this liability and responsibility, and you are accepting the liability of my advice.
Okay.
All of that being said, so I can't do hernias for free. I got to go through the hoops. I can't be a lawyer. I can't sell you a house without getting the proper licensing.
That's correct.
I think there has to be something. We as a community have to agree, especially at this point. If the orange man's going to call out fake news for long enough, we have to acknowledge that some of the news might be a tad bit fake. And that being said, they can't call themselves news. What happened to corroboration? What happened to journalists? Yeah, you can say I have an unnamed source. But when pushed in a court of law and libel and other things start coming out of the woodwork, you better corroborate that source. No matter how much they want to stay anonymous, to save your ass, you still got to prove that it came from somebody and something that you can corroborate. How have we gotten so far away from that we have no legal recourse? There is nothing that is extended to us to hold media companies liable. And there's no recourse for when you are wrong. Now we have a multi-billion-dollar corporate sector, market sector, where they never once have to correct the record, apologize for the defamation or issues they created. Everything that they result with is just moving on to the next thing. So I want to hear your thoughts on, we're just laymen in a room, but I would love to present the legal proposal that there should be some sort of licensing standard to call yourself news at this point. If any Joe Schmo can grab a microphone and a camera and throw a nice, get a sexy painting and you got to get the light. If you don't have one, but any clown can grab a microphone and talk to the internet.
Yep.
Do I get to call myself news? I feel like that's a title that should be earned or bestowed. But then also, who becomes the arbiter of truth? Who's the entity giving out these titles? Oh, yeah, the government, the entity I trust the least. So that's the balance I'm dealing with. David, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, so probably the first thing I start off with, the pushback I'm going to have immediately is, so if you're going to license news, you have to get permission from the government to exercise your rights. That's the first thing. So that's the first thing you gotta go with. So I think news is a form of speech, because why do we have the First Amendment to begin with? Is to essentially go against the government, to tell the people, the layman's, what's going on with the government. So that's why the government cannot. Well, remember when Trump and some other politicians start blocking people on Twitter? There is probably some legal precedent in which the government's blocking you from receiving information about the government. So you can't be blocked by the government. You can block the government. You can do whatever I think sometimes what we kind of get confused with is free speech and then consequences of the speech you're giving. So to have like a license to call yourself news. Well, what exactly is the threshold for news? So, let's say you have your Twitter account and there's a building on fire down the street. You announce on your Facebook, your Twitter account, hey, building over here on block 102, it's on fire. You better stay away from that area. Some can consider that news. And I think it would be a little not great for the government to go, hey, Gergat, we're going to need to get a fine from you here because you were espousing illegal news, even if the news is factual. Now, I don't disagree that there is definitely people just say things that are wrong, and it's you're going to have that. And I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. But let's go ahead and just say, hey, we're making being incorrect illegal. All right. So when we report the news,
God, I hate when you put it like that.
You can. Let's do let's just do a simple news thing. So there's been a shooting downtown. That's it. That's the news. Well, what's the information, the facts? Well, I'm just going to say my side of the story because that's the only factual part that has happened. People did have a shooting downtown. Now we go into details. Well, was this gang related? Was this, was this a revenge spot? Was this an unhinged person looking to commit violence amongst his fellow man? And we're just going to leave that, depending on whatever the narrative, because that's where the narrative comes in. That's what you want to avoid. But when you make part of that illegal, now you just give authority to be able to go that direction. It's like, well, I'm not going to comment on his race because he could be several different races. I didn't comment on his gender because it could be several different genders.
No, you cannot. Go ahead, finish.
So you can. So when you go down that road, it's like, oof, okay. Now you can see kind of where the consequences of those actions start stacking upon each other.
Right.
So let's go through your defamation thing as well. So defamation, as someone in law, it's a high bar to clear. And I think we need to keep that bar very, very high. in a more litigious society, if that bar is ever decreased in amount, there is, it pretty much unlocks the door for all sorts of different avenues to be able to sue someone for just speech they don't really like. I think very few people have actually won a defamation lawsuit. I think Hulk Hogan was one of the very few that actually did win an honest to God defamation.
Yeah, he did.
And some would argue that going against politicians is defamation, but I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Just like Trump will come out and say, "Wow, they're defaming me," or even you go on the other side, like Biden or Hunter Biden, they're come out and saying, "Hey, they're defaming me." But this is are they defaming him, or are they just telling them a side of the story that they don't like? And I think we need to be very careful in how we pick and choose what that is. And then I think one of your final points here is like, who's the arbiter of truth? Truth, I don't think sometimes truth is black and white, yes and no, right or wrong. Other times truth can be kind of lie more in the middle here, as I think as we saw with some of our activities here in 2020. The truth can evolve with more information.
Right.
So we see, like, let's use masks, for example. At first, hey, masks, it's probably, the particle's a little too small. It's not going to help anything. And then we maybe learn a little bit. Well, okay, maybe they might be doing something. They're doing better than nothing. So maybe let's try them on for size. And then all of a sudden now we're realizing, well, they didn't quite do as much as we thought they would. Were you necessarily being incorrect, or were you giving the best information to your knowledge, especially on evolving stories, things that maybe involve things that also evolve in time, like viruses, or other things that just like human nature, or you catch a spouse tweet, or you catch a spouse cheating, when really it's just a set of circumstances that you looked at incorrectly, like a sitcom or something, where like any Seinfeld episode where you don't have where they didn't have like a phone to communicate with each other, and it just causes these wacky series of events. Is that necessarily truth? Or are they being untruthful, or they just not have all the information to be able to present that side of the truth? So those are some of my thoughts here on where I think
a great response.
Where I think that comes in for like a licensing. I think should there be a threshold for news? Yes, but should it be up to the people to decide what that threshold should be? Even more so, yes.
Right. I love that point. Hey, Brian, real quick before we get into our wrapping thoughts on the topic.
Yes, sir.
Did we have any comments or anybody that wanted to jump into the dialogue?
Yeah. Actually, someone named Person McPeoples.
Person? All right.
He's joining for us. Perfect. Hey, dude, I think we just traded him, didn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's Donovan Peoples' person.
Yeah.
Damn.
The propaganda is worse on CNN because it acts like it's objective news.
So I love that, springboarding me into my final thoughts.
Okay.
Something that I want to address, the difference between defamation and libel. So when it comes to defamation, a plaintiff must show 4 things. 1, a false statement purporting to be fact. 2, publication or communication of that statement to a third person. 3, fault amounting to at least negligence. That becomes into like a damages concern, but also but for and
would that be with like negligence? Is you're wrong,
yes,
it's hurting him, and you continue
it really
to do
would
it.
indicate fault.
Yep.
Right? So like, but for you doing this, I would not. Right? So
yep.
But for your statement, I would not be experiencing whatever damage. And the 4th one would be you need to show damage or harm that is caused by this. Now, I think you raised a great point. Defamation we don't need a lowered standard for defamation because we want to have freedoms to speak here.
Yeah.
Now, I want to keep that in balance with libel.
Okay.
So when it comes to libel, the plaintiff is required to establish the exact facts that have been altered or tricked. The text in question should be clearly addressed towards an individual or entity. Damages could be in the form of shame, character assassination, ridicule, or disgrace. So it doesn't need to be as measurable, whereas in negligence and defamation, like I need to show I didn't get this I didn't get the contract or this some measurable amount, whereas this is more empathetic, disgrace, character, ridicule. And then finally, the burden of proof falls on the plaintiff, which of course that should be
That's our legal system.
Right.
That's how we designed it.
So with that all being said, I love what you say. We should never need the government's permission to use our God-given inalienable rights.
Yep.
Totally agree. And keeping that on balance with the understanding that there are consequences for your speech, especially once it becomes the First Amendment doesn't protect all speech.
No.
So obscenity, dangerous speech, those types of acts of speech are not protected. So I like how you presented your whole point, because it was the perfect pushback to where I was going with that. And it comes back to the free marketplace of ideas and the concept that we let all ideas, good and bad, flourish. And in a world where CNN is purporting BS, as long as the Rethink Tank and MSNBC and every good actor and bad actor can also have a response to it and balance the marketplace with competing ideas, well, and something standing outside the election polls today, holding a sign in the cold, trying to encourage those to, act upon their American right. A gentleman also holding a sign made the perfect response that's still resonating with me. And he looked at me because I have this knee-jerk reaction. I say it all the time. Everybody wants a political opinion, but nobody wants to do the political homework. I think we have a lot of lazy thinkers out here, and the masses are dumb. That's my opinion. At the same time, the guy I'm talking to was working as a head producer in CBS. Fox, his son works for Fox, and the dude has been in media for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And the thing he said to me, he goes, the one thing we learned in our practice is never, ever underestimate the competence of the viewer. Don't dumb it down. Don't try to talk to them like they're children. They get it. Or better yet, really what he's meaning is they can get it if they want.
Oh, yeah.
If the audience chooses to want to try to digest this and parse apart what you're giving them, they can and they will. The sad part is, and I would like to push back on his thought, I think it's still on balance with laziness. I'm not saying they don't have the ability to or are all dumb, but I think the masses have gotten lazy and they don't want to listen to us talk for an hour and a half. They'd rather just get that boiled down 2-minute synopsis of what we talked about that allows for somebody else to be the interpreter for them and create the lens of perception they view it all through. That's the dangerous place. So I like that you pushed back and kind of got me back on track to what's right. Free marketplace, allow for all people to speak. And I think that's why we experience social medias and algorithms that are so heavily invested in suppressing what could be highly sought after content, because very quickly the powers that be are losing their monopoly on your eyeballs and your attention. So break the monopoly like the Rethink Tank and join us next Tuesday. Brian, did another comment pop in before I pass it off to David?
Yeah, that actually just came in.
Oh, all right.
Do you think Elon has helped or hurt how news is shared on Twitter?
All right, so let me give you this.
All right.
Elon Musk was just on Joe Rogan last week.
Oh,
so
was he?
Friday he came on. Again, it's like every 2 years he comes on. I was just talking to that same guy at the polls, and he goes, the way to get better is you got to guest climb. You got to go for people with big audiences to bring eyeballs. Yeah. That's how you're going to get around these algorithms. That's how it works. And I looked at him and I said, my fear is becoming what Joe Rogan has developed into. When he started, those that knew about him. Those that didn't were never going to hear about him. He was in a niche. And you were listening for Joe Rogan. And over the course of 5 or 6 years, I've watched him censor himself, suppress who he really is. Because again, I was watching him at 15. Now I'm 30. I've watched you who you were, and you could say that's age and growth and wisdom. At the same time, I've watched you go to say what you've always wanted and thought, and then bite your tongue and just, it ain't worth it. So anymore, I'm not, as a big Joe Rogan guy, I'm not listening for Joe Rogan. I'm listening for his guest.
Yep.
And what made this episode, so again, how often do you get to hear one of the biggest world powers and one of the richest people alive speak for long form and uncensored? So one of the really cool things that came up in that podcast was him talking about purchasing Twitter. And how he presented it was, again, maybe Shakespearean and theatrical, but it resonated with me and felt very real. So me, knee-jerk reaction, libertarian that hates the liberal social media chokehold that Silicon Valley has on us, right? His response to that ignorant perspective is, it isn't that Silicon Valley is ultra progressive. It's not just some super coding engineer is innately wanting to push trans beliefs on Facebook or Twitter or anything else. But ironically, this hub of technology and intelligence just so happened by the sake of circumstance is located in the most tragically suffocating location besides Portland in our country. He goes, there's really nowhere else in the country besides San Francisco that is so suffocated by their politics. So it isn't that all these engineers move from Indiana and Minnesota and Maine to come to Silicon Valley and bring their liberal beliefs with them. Really, it's just they happen to be located in an area where they're sharing the gyms, the bars, the restaurants, the laundromats. All of their community is shared with the people that are most invested in pushing this agenda. And he saw it infecting our country. And he goes, I didn't do it for the country. I did it for the world. Because not only were they censoring and changing the narrative and perception for America, but they had the chokehold and control over the world. And so he felt compelled, and yeah, he got reamed on the deal. The dude isn't making money on this.
Oh, not at all.
He sure as shit is redirecting us back to rightness. And so do I think he's doing it perfectly? Surely not. Do I think he could do things better? Certainly. But what we have to admit, and I would love to touch upon this, but we really do have to get going, a topic I truly want to deep dive in is one of the things he ends his topic with is he goes, or his statement, he goes, I released the Twitter files, and yet it doesn't exist to the media or to anybody.
Yeah, where they at?
Literally.
Where?
And so I was able to show the public specific instances where the government told Twitter to censor a list of accounts, certain topics, and without discourse, debate, or any conflict, they acted. And before we knew it, they were a transparent arm of the government. He then releases all of the proof, all the docs, everything to the public. And he goes, the fact that we are not out there demanding legal recourse, somebody needs to go to jail. The government needs to be held accountable for this severe illegal act that they infected the public discourse with.
Buried.
Exactly.
They buried it.
So there's something interesting here. I love the question because truthfully, do I think it's the best thing we got? No. Do I think it could be better? Yes. But when I'm asked, do I think what he did was good for humanity and is at least the first step towards our end goal of free speech and John Locke's utilitarianism, maximizing the most amount of happiness for the most amount of people, if that's our goal, this is at least a step toward. It's not getting us there, maybe, but it's definitely a step towards it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I agree with some of what you said. I think in the spirit of the question here too, the issue Elon has with the app formerly known as Twitter, the in his I think his crusade to make a better platform, he's now moving people away from the platform that made it so big to begin with. So let's say his ultimate
but are
goal.
They really? I think there's
I think
a lot
they
of
are.
Whoopi Goldberg might be saying I am. But is she?
I think you outside of that first like several months when he was in charge of Twitter, it was big day in Twitter. Everyone was using it. Everyone wanted to see what's going on. It's the new soap opera. It was very kind of a communal thing. Now, I bet if you look at the numbers here too, and they're no longer public because it's now a private company. Yeah. I bet you less and less people of importance are starting to use Twitter because they now feel that platform is threatened by someone that may not agree with their
whether they feel that way or not. So to your point, you're saying it's straying people away. Whether it is or isn't, if the platform is, whether they believe it or not, let's just say in the spirit of things, if it is creating a more free algorithm, because to me, it definitely feels like my tweets or the Rethink Tank's tweets too are definitely going to more new eyeballs than before he bought it. So to me, it definitely feels like I'm getting more exposure naturally than I was before. So whether or not an ignorant blue jersey asshole leaves or not, that's their problem. I'd want to push back and make the argument that as long as we're still going towards the free discourse, whether or not the clown with the red nose wants to join the dialogue, that's their issue. More said, I don't want to be in an echo chamber, but if you don't want to challenge your ideas and actually, if you think you're right, liberate me from my ignorances. But if you can't do that, or you're afraid to do that, or you're just refusing, then I don't need you in the dialogue to begin with. Let the cooks cook, let the chefs cook. We'll do our thing. Get out of the kitchen.
Yeah, but I still think he's reducing the amount of social cachet the app had to begin with, and I think the app was probably at its height roughly between 2016, 2020, or maybe 2021, right around then. You think that was probably about the height of
government was when the government was driving the train. It was the funnest ride.
Well, I don't want to say the funnest ride, but it had the most socially impactful ride. Like there's a lot of things that happen. I'll push back on that. When Trump had his who was the biggest person on that platform? Trump. Yeah. Yes, he's the government, but boy, that's probably not government approved speech. You remember Covfefe? Definitely a code word for something. And he just spout things off. It was very entertaining and wonderfully just. You'd have celebrity things would break on Twitter. I don't hear things breaking on Twitter quite as much. You get some threads, people throw it out there, but I think it's losing the social cachet that gave it the power to begin with. Is that better for a country? Maybe, probably. But is there unintended consequences that come along with that? The fracturing of our dialogue, possibly. So I don't know. In our, who was the person that asked the question?
Donovan Peoples person.
No, it was Mick Person.
Oh, it was William Shatner. Asked us about Elon.
That's a good name.
Oh,
Mr. Shatner.
Well, from where I'm sitting at, their icons look dead the same. Their profile
one's
pictures,
like pink, one's like orange.
I know, but to me, I'm like People's person.
They're about the same.
So this is William who? Let's name him.
William Shatner. I'm sorry. I apologize. I meant to.
Thank you, Shatner.
Mr.
I appreciate
Shatner.
you, William.
Awesome.
So again, you did draw upon another thing that I like, which is I used to be able to rely on Twitter's trending. Okay, what are the big? What's me and you are trying to create an algorithmic friendly show that's talking about the relevant topics of today. You know what I could always rely on for that when I was doing the podcast and on a live show that needed it? I would always go to Twitter. Yep. What's trending right now? This is the biggest thing in the world. The thing that's really striking a chord with the point you made is we've been doing this now since the first week of September. I go to Twitter and it's a wasteland.
There's too many.
There's nothing in the trending to give me value on or to give me insight on what's fresh and topical of the America today.
And this might just be nostalgia glasses, but I think remember when trending was just like 5 topics. That was it. and you could only trend so many times in a row too. So like Ben Shapiro, famous one, who just, well, he hit his max amount of trending and can no longer be trending regardless of if, whatever the threshold was to be on there. Now it's what's trending in sports, what's trending in this. It's too many different things going on, where I think the appetite was more what's the top 5. Give me the top 5. I'll take it and I'll run with it. But I wonder if that's just users go, well, I don't want to see just top 5. I want to see what's trending in my little niche circle: gaming, music, movies, sports, whatever. And with that, do we lose a little bit of that interconnectivity we had, almost like when cable was real big right before the internet, where everyone just kind of had the same opinion on it? Well, everyone had the same media consumption on the few things. They had their different opinions, but it was all based on the foundation that we all watched The Simpsons on Sunday night on Fox, or we watched I guess be Family Guy also Sunday night on Fox. But like American Idol. I don't think you can have the same style of show like American Idol today, because it was too many people were watching it, where now it's a little bit more fractured. I think that's where Twitter's going. So I don't know, in the spirit of Mr. Scatner's question here, I don't think so. I think he's going the opposite direction of what he really ultimately wants. Now, time will tell. He's very good at course correcting these things, and it hasn't. The chaos on the app formerly known as Twitter is not as bad as it once was. You just don't hear about it now. It's kind of cool. It's kind of relaxed, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think only time will tell. Brian, any wrapping thoughts you have for us?
The only other news platform that's conservative I could think of is OAN.
Oh boy,
and they got taken off of cable, but yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right. Moving on to the next subject: the circus of the Trump trial. So I'm going to pitch it off to David real quick to break. We're going to be talking about the civil fraud trial, but there's a few trials that we're trying to balance here. And ironically, through my reading, it's funny. I'm reading how anchors are, they're talking about the images from this trial or statements from this trial. And even Trump's son and the anchors are having a hard time keeping track of which trial is which and which one they're currently talking about. So today we're talking about the civil fraud trial, but what are the trials that he's currently facing as we're trying to?
So the civil fraud trial is the real spicy one today, because it's the one Trump actually went on the stand and spoke for like 4 hours. He was questioned, he was drilled, all sorts of different things. But this isn't his only one. He's got a few others. The big one I think is really going to bite him in the ass is the Georgia election fraud case. So this was brought when he had, I don't know if he was in collude. It's almost like a RICO style case as well, where there's several different members of the Trump tree that decided to go out and try to basically do election fraud in Georgia. And there's a specific county. I don't have the county in front of me now, but that was the specific spot that started this whole thing. And what makes the Georgia specific, this specific trial, is you can't just expunge it by being president, can't expunge it by being any sort of member of Congress. It is locked into the state. So it's either when this bad boy finally does go to trial, we're going to find out one way or another, or there's going to be a verdict and it's going to stick. This one's going to stick like glue. And then there's two other trials. There's the general election fraud trial, the federal case, and then there's the January 6th specific spot of the election, or the federal election fraud case. So this specific one in New York, this one's a civil case, and more dealing like tax law, where the premise of this one is he has, Trump has a lot of different businesses, and any good business person gets loans, does taxes. So half of this is tax evasion, and half of this is fraudulent business practices to either get a better loan at a better rate or a higher loan at a better rate by overvaluing the businesses. So what a lot of rich folk will do. Well, if I need, Elon Musk needs $1 million to buy a house, what he'll do is he'll go to a place that'll loan it out, and my collateral is $1 billion worth of Tesla stock. So any bank will go, okay, if you default on this $1 million loan, I will own your ass, and I will own Tesla. So that's great. So take it. So they have these really ridiculous, like 0.5% to 1% loans. And as long as the stock does better, you'll be able to pay off that loan. It's not a big deal. So that's what Trump's trying to do. So remember back in early to mid 2000s, and probably a little more close to that early, Trump would sue you if you in a publication would call him a millionaire, not a billionaire. So a lot of this.
I did not know about that. What?
Yeah, you didn't know this.
No, I didn't know that either.
So there were several news.
What a clown, dude.
There was several news organizations that mislabeled him as a millionaire. And he went and sued them it was defamation.
Okay,
It was
I just want to ask you personally,
okay.
because it speaks to this goes back to like the liberals communist narrative. Like, at what point is enough enough? My question for you is, yeah, like again, at what point is enough enough?
All right.
But if you're the type of nature, right? So one of the things that always comes up is like, you created the game. The game is capitalism. You can't then retroactively go back and harm people for being too good at the game.
Yeah.
You're winning too much. Slow down. Maybe we need to change the rules of the game a little bit before we harm people or reprimand people for being good at the game that we created. That being said, if the game is collect the green paper.
Yep.
And dude, we'd be lucky if anybody in this room becomes a millionaire. We'd be lucky.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that.
Yeah.
Bless up.
But imagine if you become, of the percent that becomes a millionaire, the drive and again, small loan of $1 million. You asshole. I'd love for me to give you $1 million and you turn that into $1 billion. I mean, look at every famous person you praise on your Instagram. Not a single one of those assholes with their 25 million can turn it into 1 billion. And this guy has 45. You're an asshole. That being said, if you're so damn good at taking the small loan of $1 million and turning it into $1 billion, why would you? I would never let anybody get away with calling me anything else. That's like being called King Arthur. I'm King Arthur, but you can call me Arthur. No, I'm king now. I'm king. I get that feeds the narcissistic, evil side of us, and it isn't a good thing. But any person listening right now, I want you to be real with yourself. You'd be lucky if you made $1 million, and then you'd be a very great person at your profession if you could then become a billionaire. He didn't inherit it like some Saudi prince. To go from $1 million to $1 billion is a feat. And then I'd be upset if you're calling. To me, it's like something about that resonates with me. Like,
all right,
my title is king. I am king, not prince. But also, there's a narcissism. I would never do it. I'm admitting I'm never going to sue somebody for calling. I'm just happy to be a millionaire. At the same time, though, I get it. It's a mentality. The reason you're not a billionaire is because you don't have the drive and need that would sue CNN for not giving me the proper title. That's why you're not a billionaire. You're like, there's a nature to, you only reach this feat when you have this drive and cutthroat mentality to get you there. Sorry, that's just I'm balancing his perspective.
So let me take that, because this leads right into my next point of this case. So so being a billionaire is a bit of a double-edged sword. So he's suing people, saying he's a billionaire, getting loans as if he was a billionaire. However, when the taxes come due and when his businesses are doing whatever they're doing, all of a sudden, where the real issue is, he's not really paying his taxes because those businesses aren't. He's saying the businesses aren't making quite as much money as they actually are to pay less taxes. So on one hand, I'm a billionaire. I'm making all this money. I'm doing good for myself. On the other hand, oh my God, government, you need to look at my tax bill again here, because this isn't. I don't agree. I'm poor. I'm practically starving on the street. Unfortunately, in the rule of law, you cannot have it both ways. So what this fraud case is going through is part of that. It's tax evasion with the, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're a billionaire and you got to pay your taxes just like everyone else, or you're not doing well in your businesses, but you can't call yourself a billionaire. So this is where it's coming both ends. Both ends are coming due for him here. So, when you pass that bar, you might want to be on his legal team, because his legal team has fumbled the bag on this one. They let some documents go through or just like go out to the public that shouldn't have went out to the public. It's almost like an inside job. It almost looks like an inside job. This is how incompetent some of these lawyers are. But the big thing, I think the big talking point today, because he was on the stand and he was fired up. People drilling him for 4 hours straight. He's harassing the judge. He just constantly just harassed the judge. He was eventually getting kicked out of the courtroom because he just wouldn't stop harassing this judge. It's probably one of his rallies, but he's like in a bad mood the whole time and he can't escape. So he has to sit there. If that was on pay-per-view, I bet you good money. That might outdo some UFC fights. In fact, might outdo almost every UFC fight.
I'm willing to go on a limb and argue that. Now, in regards to what are some of the things that he said? So he's on the stand, he's speaking for 4 hours, and of course, his knee-jerk reaction is to keep calling it a political witch hunt. This is a political witch hunt, and I think she should be ashamed of herself. Speaking about Judge, where's her name at? Judge Engoron.
He spoke for 4 hours straight.
I wouldn't call it 4 hours straight. He was on the stand for 4 hours.
Okay.
And he was being
and
questioned.
Of course, he's letting, where's the attorney? We've got New York Attorney General Letitia James, who, trust me, they love, especially when it's your chance to talk to an ex-president and the most hated person in America. Trust me, you're going to get a little bit narrative and grandstand your opportunity to be on the stage.
Right.
So there's a lot of times where he's just sitting there and she's like, Mr. President, and he's just like, get to the freaking question.
She was also, Letitia James, subtweeting the whole thing.
Yeah. So
there was definitely
sounds like a professional.
And also, if you remember Letitia James's, I know most of the audience does remember this, her political campaign. She ran on the sole fact of
I'm going to put him in jail.
I'm gonna
put him in jail.
Put him in jail. And say what you want about politicians, but she's trying to hold her end of the bargain.
And she's doing a good job. Hey, she's doing more than most of our politicians.
Yeah.
So some of the things that Trump goes on to call this is a fraud on the court and not on me. It's a terrible thing you've done here, Judge. You believe this political hack back there, and it's unfortunate as he's talking to the rest of the court. After one particularly long monologue, the attorney had asked Trump, "You done?" He just goes, "Done." and the judge. So in response to all this, Judge Engoron, she goes, "This is not a political rally. Control your client. The court needs to hear what he has to say about these statements." His attorney responds, he's describing to you about why there was no intent to mislead anyone with his answers. That's what he's doing. But Judge Engoron did not agree. "I am not here to hear what he has to say. We are here to hear him answer questions, and most of the time he's not." Wait. But this is, again, this is my narrative. As somebody that just held a sign in freezing cold weather for 3 hours to promote our local judge, vote Judge DiGeronimo. That being said, I need to emphasize that judges are just people. Especially somebody in the legal world, they are gods. You go to these events and it's just like, oh my God, there she is. Roll out the card. Oh my God, thank you. Oh my God, thank you for that. And you do that because if I kiss the ring, you remember I bent over and was a bitch. So when I'm in front of you in the courtroom, you give me, because this isn't what's right. The system has its flaws because it's run by flawed humans.
Yep.
So I don't need to be the most right. I don't need to do all my legal homework to be the best zealous advocate I can for my client. No, what I need to do is just go to this dinner, write a check to the judge, kiss her ring a couple times, and she'll remember me. So I don't have to go above and beyond. As long as I'm just sufficient, she's going to scoop me through. That's because we've created this culture to where now the result is it's just ego fueling and back patting. I'm the judge. But in all reality, you're just a person. I've been saying this forever when I was struggling in law school, right? So the bottom 20% of law school students get cut. So it becomes a super competitive environment, even through the last year, because you could have done 2.5 years and that last semester, you still get cut because you were at the bottom. So it's super competitive. That all being said, you're trying to recognize, okay, how many of these people are going to be high caliber attorneys? How many? It doesn't matter. When it comes to the person in this position, they're led to believe, well, I'm the best of the bunch. But really, it's not indicative of anything other than you were elected. So it could have been there was a political party that had supported you. You were a highly popular person in your community. Or the thing that is the most prevalent in the legal field is you have a last name of a daddy who used to actually be good, and you're just the daughter of them. And so we're going to make you the next judge. Because,
heritage.
And that's the vast majority of them. I mean, talking before this live show, we were talking about how we had 3 Rubies as mayor in Brecksville. And now this is the first, just because his nuts didn't work, we don't actually have a Ruby that's going to be running this town. So,
one way to put it.
I mean, he doesn't have kids.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
So, that being said, the problem I have is, one, they're not these all holy. They're human beings.
Yeah.
And so they are going to have human flaws and human biases. The scary part is when you sit here and say, I don't want to hear what he has to say. And then you follow it up with, we are only here to hear him answer the question. So are you like, what is going on in your head? What do you think you're communicating? I don't know. Let me flip it off to you as I
civil trials have a history of there's precedent of them being more than the actual trial than they're about. This is the first time he's been on the stand since we'll just call it since January 6th. So there's you can't, just like the Al Capone thing, you can't, he didn't get put away for tax fraud. That was just the thing they could put on him. So this has shades of the exact same flavor. And there's been, I'm sure there's probably, there's probably a fan fiction series of individuals who put Trump on the stand and just question him to high heaven until he cries. So it's for someone to actually have that opportunity and authority, especially if they've been campaigning to be in this position the whole time. This is their Super Bowl. This is the moment.
And don't you think you'd want to hear it all? Like if you're not already totally lost in your convictions, wouldn't you want, if again, attorneys coach their clients into not speaking on the stand, because all you really can do is disarm all the work I've done to convince the jury or the judge and dig your hole deeper, unless you have some fruits that I might find valuable. So the only thing that comes from him speaking, at least in the negative, is him harming himself. So there's no harm in hearing him and what he has to say. It's scary that the judge has compartmentalized their brain in such a degree that I will scream at him, I don't want to hear what he has to say, and follow it up with, we're just here to answer his questions. And they're just sitting there like, but you don't like my answer. That's what you don't like how I'm answering. These are answers to the question. So what do you want to hear, lady? But again, they're omniscient. They're not human. They're godlike. And they're not going to let, even though she's a Democrat judge that got through the same political vine that Letitia James did, we're going to ignore all of that because she's God. And so, of course, she's not going to let any of that infect her ability to be unbiased, right?
Yeah, well, I also think Trump is probably the worst client to have in the history of clients, because he's not going to listen to you. And he's just going to go off the cuff at any point. How many lawyers has Trump had just in the entirety of even just his presidency? He's went through, there's only one guy who's really been there for most of it, Rudy Giuliani. And even then, he'd probably just all right, you just do what you want. The more you must be aggravating. The more you tell me, all right, just don't say this. I got this lock and key. It's rock solid. There's no way they can go against this. All you need to do is just say nothing. Put him on the stand, and what does he do? He just starts spouting everything out.
Yeah.
See, because he treats it like a political rally, and I think the judge decided, or the Trump's lawyers kicked it off to the judge, say, do you want this to be a jury trial or not? And I believe it is a jury trial. You might have to fact check me on that
I'm
one,
of the
Brian.
understanding it is.
I think it is a jury trial. So
has to
you put him on the stand. He's charming. When he's just doing a rally, he's pretty charming. He can get some laughs out of the jurors, and
but again, that's my right. My right is I have the right to charm the jury. That's why it's a collection of my peers and not just some political asshole, one of them.
Yeah, well, but also, I think in the spirit of the case too, you can't just turn this into a political rally. You got to keep it on track. You have to keep it on track. And I think is that not the judge's ability, or
that's their job?
Sole duty. Hey, we got to keep you on track here. He's like, hey, stop making this political. Keep to the question, whatever the question may be. Keep to it. And I'm sure that was
a great point.
That was hours of difficulty, just reining him in, letting him go, reining him in, letting him go. Because I don't think he's saying too many things that are just damning, other than just, I'm the greatest of all time. I did this, that, and the other.
One thing that you triggered in me that I'm kind of self-reflecting on is if every answer revolves around this being a political witch hunt, then no, you're not answering the question, but then this is becoming a political advertisement.
Yeah.
So I see it like, yeah, even if that's the crux of your legal position and that's what you're trying to show, you only get to say that a couple times or present your point. But by the time you're just like a rally, just continuously, it's a witch hunt. Okay, yep. Well, now we're no longer just trying to parse apart the facts, and you are just preaching your own position.
I think we've just discovered why this took 4 hours to complete. So it's pretty much, I bet that's exactly what happened. First 10 minutes, I'm going to answer the question. The next, oh, Jesus, 3 hours and 45 minutes of, this is a political witch hunt. Nope, you stop this. Jesus.
Yeah.
It would be entertaining to watch. It's so entertaining. I really wish there's a camera just sitting in there.
One of the things you said that really I want to emphasize is you think the Georgia trial is going to stick. And once it sticks, it's going to, or you think no matter what, that decision will stick like glue.
There'll be I guess let me rephrase. So if it's negative, it's going to stick like glue. Obviously, if it's positive in the favor of Trump,
there's appeals and
I guess it's going to stick like glue in the fact that now I'm exonerated of whatever's going on here. My enemies say this is the most difficult trial. I'll never be able to get past it, and now I'm found not guilty.
Right, and
that's going to stick.
To double back to what you were emphasizing is the legal I guess hurdles that bar any recourse or appeal beyond the original decision. That being said, you presented multiple trials that are in front of this guy.
Yep.
One that's probably going to actually hurt him, whether or not it does or doesn't. Once we get that conviction, it's stuck. At what point are we going to sit back and go, is this the guy? Like, what are we talking about? Like, we have 350 million people in this tribe. Whether or not he's the person that's saying the most things that resonate with you, are you still the most? Are you going to say that's the best? Is that you're going to say that's the best? Out of 350 million people, that's the best? I'm going to go out on a limb, think not. Nope. So at what point are we going to start demanding more choices and stop entertaining? Yes, he's entertaining. Yes, he says the things I so badly would love to poke the hornet's nest with. At the same time, he is a clown, and he does not represent the good people of America. He represents a lot of the anger that good people hold right now, or resentment, but he isn't representing the best of America. So when we're having all of this dangle over our head, at what point are we going to get sick of it and start demanding more than two very crappy options? What is it? A douchebag and a turd sandwich? Whatever South Park.
It's exactly right. Yeah.
So at what point are we going to demand for a cupcake instead of a douchebag or a shit sandwich? Last topic I want to bring up before we wrap up the Trump thing.
Real quick, there is no jury at this trial. At any of the trials.
It is just a judge. Interesting.
Which in civil cases, that is
that usually how it goes?
The case. But in this situation, you would normally want to opt for a jury if you're going to be convinced that the judge is a George Soros political actor, then at some point you need to disarm them and trust your peers. At the same time, you don't trust your peers because you know you've pissed off most of New York.
So this is why his legal team is just incompetent as all hell. I can't imagine that the best lawyer in the world. No, I'm going to stay far away from Trump. He doesn't do anything I tell him to do. That might be the most annoying part of any client. The lawyer has shut the fuck up.
That's a great point. Now, the last subject I have for us here before we move on from the Trump thing is speaking about Callie McEnany. She was the old White House press secretary before Trump had been removed from office. Now, the article title makes me laugh. Kayleigh McEnany whines about Trump's courtroom sketch. So she makes a comment, and Brian, if you want to put on the sketches here for us as we...
McEnany.
Hold on. I just want to... Boom. So, Kayleigh McEnany said she advised Trump to keep doing what he's doing with his evidence to the court contesting New York Attorney General Letitia James's $250 million lawsuit against himself and his company for allegedly overvaluing assets. But she also suggests to Trump that he asked for a better sketch artist because that he does not look like my former boss. This sketch is a travesty, she said. It looks nothing like Trump. And co-anchor Greg Gutfeld joked in his response, saying, but his hands look quite sizable. Now, in response to this, the artist, Elizabeth Williams, said that dumping on court artists is becoming more and more common. A courtroom sketch artist has responded to the Fox News commentator who called her drawings of Trump a travesty. This dumping on court artists has now become part of our business. I'm getting used to it. Williams has also been a courtroom artist for decades and recapped her coverage of Trump going back to the 1980s. Ironically, she said, when I drew him in 1986 during the USFL NFL trial, which I would love to go down that road. Oh, my God. He single-handedly took down the USFL, the United States Football League. That was
Trump did?
Single-handedly torn down by Trump. I don't want to beat down that road too just briefly.
Another topic for another show.
What happened in that situation was he wanted to become an NFL team owner. He couldn't. The NFL wasn't going to let him buy in. So he then co-founded or helped co-found the USFL, was hoping to get a big enough franchise to then merge with the NFL. And that was his loophole of getting an NFL football team. Well, as the USFL was becoming ultra competitive with the NFL, there was a decision amongst the owners to keep it on the off season of the NFL. And he wanted it to become a direct competitor of the NFL. And as an FU, if you're not going to let me into the boys club, then I'm going to take down the club. He announced illegally outside of the owner's board that we have decided that we are going to directly compete with the NFL on Sundays. And they were all like, whoa, none of us said that. At the same time, their stocks just plummeted. Everybody's like, well, then we're not watching you. And so because of that, the USFL crumbled, and a lot of it points to Trump speaking out of ignorance at that press conference. Now, during that trial, she goes on to say how now that he's president and a leader of a huge political movement, it's a whole different story. Before, they would just overlook him. Now, the artwork was criticized because it made... Looking back at that hearing in Miami, the artwork was criticized because it made him look too young. When I drew him on the sand for sanctions, it ended up on SNL. And SNL, so the Weekend Update, Colin Jost made jokes about how the former president's eldest son is asking for a different court reporter because they want his illusion, the illustration to look more sexy. That all being said, I just love this, like, both corners of the political divide have a comment about the court reporter. It's like, we're talking about a drawing of a guy that have we seen enough pictures of the guy? Like, what else do you need to see? Close your eyes, and I'm telling you, Trump is talking shit on the stand. I don't think you need a drawing. You're picturing it. It's in your head.
This is where AI art will really come in handy. Unbiased, just paint me Trump in a courtroom. Go for it.
I want, to the AI dialogue, I want a picture of Trump sitting on the stand with many hands holding a Whopper.
Or
I want a Whopper, but my hands just aren't big enough.
or the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the giant hands.
The uncle of bird law.
Yeah.
Where were you on? Oh my God, don't look at my hands. That's perfect. All right. Let's get to the exciting part of our Tuesday.
Yeah.
November 7th. It's election day. While Brian's getting everything together, because we got to get an update as we're bringing in the election here into a close. One of the things going on, of course, I have a personal bias in this situation. I want my boss to get elected. Vote for the judge. At that being said, there's a lot of interesting policies on the ballot today.
Oh, absolutely.
So issue 2, big thing, smoking doobies. Who wants some marijuana? But that's not even the big one. A lot of people had discrepancies. Somebody who was talking to me at work today, he goes, my wife wasn't too keen about it because she goes, look at this. If you see it can, if caught, it can bar you from owning a weapon. And he goes, currently it's illegal.
Yes.
Which would definitely bar me from owning a weapon. So at least this is a little bit better. I could go to a store. That whole thing being said, I think that's a pretty open and shut case. The one that's really been up for debate in Ohio, for those of you that aren't in Ohio, is issue 1, which is a dialogue on abortion.
Yep.
Now, the Republican side of things and really just proponents against the bill tried aggressively to blur the lines of what this law means and what it does. I'm going to purport what I think it is, and you can balance that because we also have the actual black text.
Yep,
black
I got the text
itself
in front of me here. So,
but the way I've interpreted it is making legal black letter script legalizing abortion.
Yep.
It's not changing anything, but it's just solidifying what we currently have.
Is it legalizing it or is it codifying it?
Codifying.
I think it's good.
Yeah, but let's admit abortions are illegal through the quasi lens of the Supreme Court. There's nothing in Ohio saying you have the right to do this here.
I don't think it's illegal to. I don't believe this might be a great one for you here, Brian. I don't think abortions like today. Obviously, the law hasn't passed or approved or whatever. I don't think abortions are illegal in Ohio, even after Roe v. Wade.
What the balance between state laws. You don't have to look it up, Brian. What I want to emphasize is the balance between state laws and federal laws.
Yep.
And so state laws come into play everywhere a federal law doesn't make a ruling.
Yeah. Well,
right?
is this a federal law, or I think this was a right? I think it was you had a right to an abortion through the 14th Amendment, or is that how
again, that's the Supreme Court's interpretation of something. Abortion is not scripted in federal law, literally anywhere. And so again, that's why the liberals were so upset when they repealed Roe v. Wade, right?
Yep.
Because that was the only legal precedent that concretely made abortions legal.
Yep.
There's nothing in federal law that legalizes this act. It's the Supreme Court's interpretation of an amendment that gives you this right, but also there's nothing that says you have this right besides an amendment, a Supreme Court decision that has been reversed.
It has been reversed.
Okay, so the only thing that corroborated the right has now been eliminated. So if you look at the federal scope, there is nothing addressing this. Now then passing the baton for states to step in and fill that void. They can either choose to remain indifferent on it And the way the law sits leading up to this current point, if the state takes a indifferent, neutral position, it would default to abortion being legal.
Yep.
So it isn't scripted, it's defaulted to.
So in law, if it's not illegal, is it just not criminalized?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So if it doesn't explicitly state it's illegal,
right,
then it's.
But it also doesn't say it's legal.
Yeah. So
that's the problem.
There's that
that's
gray
where
area. Weird.
Somebody that is calling for this abortion, somebody that's calling for abortion, they can rest easy knowing that it's corroborated. But it isn't legitimized until it is scripted, like your Georgia law, right?
Yep.
Or your Georgia decision.
Yep.
It doesn't stick like glue. And again, it isn't permanent, but it just becomes so much more difficult to reverse or get rid of. The way and again, when you talk to people that are voting against this, they aren't voting for it on a autonomy, liberty perspective. It's, admit it, you strictly don't like abortion. And they'll go, yeah, no, it is. I don't like abortion.
Yeah.
So this is directly identifying the line in Ohio, abortion or not.
Yep.
Now, one of the things my sister had sent me earlier this week to kind of get, what do I make of this? Because you've got two different narratives that blur what the actual black text is. And so she got this document from Republican perspective of vote no on issue 1. And it gives 4 reasons to do so. It removes parents' rights. And it goes on with a little blurb here on how, the individual's language uses the legal term individual, which does not differentiate between adults and minors. And now an individual legally refers to citizens of all ages, nullifying parents' rights to stop their children from making harmful decisions, from trans things to abortion. The second one is it allows abortions through 9 months of pregnancy. That just ain't the case. 3, it enshrines the right to sex change surgery and hormones for minors. That's its own little thing, but I also think it's an unfair characterization. And 4th and finally, it enables abusers. Well, why is this worth bringing up? Because you can get an infographic with 4 bullet points and a little blurb that totally redefines what the actual black letter law is. What are we passing? Be it resolved by the people of the state of Ohio that Article 1 of the Ohio Constitution is amended to add the following. It's not doing anything but just also further codifying this. Every individual has the right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including but not limited to decisions on contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion. And it goes on. Yeah, we could talk about the state shall not directly or indirectly burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against either an individual's voluntary exercise of this right or a person or entity that assists an individual in exercising this right. And it goes on further to talk about this more. But when you read the language and what it says, and this guy, I just want to, my diatribe is this.
Okay.
My mom catches me on my way to work today, and she goes, so what are your thoughts on issue 1? And unfortunately for her, I'm half tired and I'm an asshole to begin with. So my knee-jerk reaction is, I don't care. I don't want to care because I don't have a uterus. And because of that, you've beaten and battered me for enough years and made it clear to me that I'm not allowed to talk on this. And even furthermore, I am financially stable enough and I'm old enough to where I'm not getting women pregnant out of wedlock. At the point at which I am, I'm comfortable enough to take care of it.
Yep.
So whoever it is, I'll take care of that baby. I'm not an 18-year-old that has a life ahead of them that has other considerations to take on. But you've also made it clear it ain't my consideration to be heard from. So this isn't mine, and I wipe my hands of it. That being said, when you look at the black letter law, the thing that resonates with me is how do you not support autonomy? Right now, there is autonomy. And this is just legitimizing the fact that you have the autonomy. As I further communicated to my mom, we kept the dialogue going. I go, Mom, The real issue here isn't having an abortion clinic. My mom worked at Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood's existence isn't the abortion problem the Republican wants to make it out to be.
I agree.
We have a social problem. You know, in the Bible, they talked about when there is somebody that needs an abortion, it isn't a failure of that woman who gets the abortion. It's the failure of the community to make that woman feel as if it was necessary to kill the baby. I think there's something there. If we had a strong enough community that allowed for options to take care of single mothers or low-income families in these situations, and there was enough support system, grandparents, social churches, schools, systems that didn't completely devoid the person the second they had a baby too early without the financial stability.
Mhm.
With that all being said, if you had a community that could take care of all those needs, you wouldn't have a woman that felt needing to kill their baby. And we're not flicking boogers. You are killing babies. And
Yep.
that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. You have the choice to do that, but we need to start having real social commentary. My position is this. I think these laws and these topics and discussions are moot the second we start having a strong moral country that doesn't find killing people the same as taking a shit. It's not the same.
No.
And so let me hear your thoughts before I continue on.
Well, I want to go. I want to kind of end your thoughts with kind of my
Please.
thoughts on that. I wish we'd go back more to the kind of the Bill Clinton era of abortion politics, safe, legal.
Yeah, Biden said that too. That
He
current
did.
president,
He did,
man.
in fact, say that. Now we've gone. Unfortunately, the pendulum has swung the other way of where we shout our abortions. We're proud to have them. I don't.
Yeah, dude, that's jacked up. I'm sorry.
It's not good. It's absolutely, and it's hurting that whole kind of community. That even to call it community just feels
right, because
gross.
they're not a community. It's the demographic.
Yeah,
the people that take on that decision.
Yeah, and it's not doing them any favors. You're shouting it. You're proud of it. You're telling stories about it. Like that, we need to keep this as a very somber thing. Like this is a reality that we need to comprehend with because of X, Y, and Z within the community, or again, as you eloquently put, not feeling that this is a good decision for me. Unfortunately, that's not where we're at. This now becomes more of like a woman, like this very pro woman thing. It's very, very kind of like almost like I don't want to say third wave feminist, but it's got a lot of it's got a lot of flavors of that.
Like, let me ask, just to piggyback off of
okay.
that. I'm driving to work after the dialogue with my mom, and the thing I can't get out of my head is what I said to her, and it feels cool. I'm 30, I have a job, and I'm comfortable enough in my life to where it in no way it would have crippled me in college. It would have crippled me before or going into law school, going through law school. It would have crippled me. Now I'm in nowhere near that perspective. And if I were to get a girl out of wedlock, pregnant, and I'm willing and excited to embrace this, still moot. And I still have to sit here and comfortably watch you murder. That's what it is. And at the same time, I acknowledge, God damn it, I hear you, feminist. I acknowledge how repulsive it should be to a person to make someone go through the agonies of childbirth when they don't want to.
Yeah.
Then don't have sex. Oh, wait, we're not allowed to say that. Don't do it, whore. Like, either have the baby or don't do it. Hence, I'm the whore. If I'm doing it and I'm not ready to take care of you and that baby, then I'm just as much the trash that I'm talking about.
Yeah. I think the dialogue is getting away from that, but should the state, and I think the more to kind of bring this back to the issue, should the state be allowed to tell someone not to be able to do that, regardless of maybe the horrors in which the act is. She ain't pretty. No, I don't think the state has the right to be able to tell me no on this. And I'm glad we're putting this up to a vote, and it's not just a bureaucratic, we're just going to pass a law and that's it. And I mean, that's why we had, well, it was our first live show with Don. That's why we had the, I don't even remember what the issue was. I think it was only one issue.
It was issue 1.
It was the special election.
Yeah.
So this allows us to at least have a vote in the country to be able to do it. And the great thing about abortion is you can choose not to have one. You can absolutely choose not to have one. If you don't like it, you think it's horrific, great. Don't have one. Just don't. So, and what I don't like. So here's my issue with issue 1. Boy, I do not like how this is written. I think there's a couple of different ways within the policy that just we're maybe getting the most probably the most optimistic view of what an abortion can be. The language here is very vague.
What's some of the language that
I'll point to the third one because I think this one probably has the most. I think most sane individuals can come out and do a test that the late-term abortions is exceptionally bad. That is very, very bad. And I think most people stomach the Roe v. Wade position of about pre-first trimester into like second trimester, kind of depending on special circumstances, and really when it's between life and death of the mother, or if, some catastrophic problems. I don't think Roe v. Wade really covers that, but in some special case, I think most people agree with that. But with the way this is particularly written, so let me just read the text here. However, abortion may be prohibited after fetal viability. May be prohibited after fetal viability, but in no case may such an abortion be prohibited if the professional judgment of the pregnant patient's treating physician it is necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health. And I think there's a couple key words that come into that here. Is kind of the vagueness of what's going on. I don't think the first part's really all that controversial. Abortion's prohibited after fetal viability. Now, where do they determine that? That's the other thing too.
Yeah.
It should just go out and there's kind of legitimate science to this. First trimester or mid first trimester. You can go in between. You can make that distinction here, but they left it vague. And then the kind of the big point I think a lot of people really point to is if there's a physician that says your health is going to be impacted by having this abortion, if you're past that fetal viability range, let's go ahead and assume it is the first trimester and just call it, just for sake of argument here, you can do that. Now, I think this is going to be tested in court. This is going to be challenged quite a bit because I'm sure there's going to be a couple people here that will, I think, in earnest, go through the process and get a late-term abortion because of X, Y, and Z. And then there's going to be a few people who really use that as they'll circle it and go, this person had it because they just didn't feel like having it anymore. If it was a mental health thing, let's say they go through a divorce mid-pregnancy and I no longer want to have the baby. I think there's a couple of different ways a litigator could go after this and really say, hey, I want to ban this part of the bill because of X, Y, and Z. And when I think you just leave that door open, it really should be a bit more open and shut here, especially as we're talking about such a just not a great subject. So
you know what I really love? I love your point. And this is going to be my wrapping thought, at least on the abortion thing, before we get to the answers on the screen here.
Ooh.
If we're going, the whole purpose of this, as both of you and I have articulated, abortion technically is illegal. But it's vague enough in the state legal realm enough to where the door is still open for a legislative demand from the state making a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
So we, the people, need to vote to get something concretely. So our compromised representatives can't bestow upon us some lordly decision we don't agree on.
Oh, absolutely.
So I appreciate, as you presented, that this was left to the people. I appreciate that issue 1 in August failed. So now it's a 50-50 vote. Just get the majority of people to believe one way or the other. And this will be how we as a state move forward. That being said, if we're going to draw a line, let's finally, for the sake of God, eliminate all the vagueness and draw a flippin' line. So some of the things you pointed out, they have the right to do this for the sake of the child's health, for the patient's health, for the sake of the patient's life. Who determines that? And you asked a lot of these questions. Who determines this? Who determines that? The whole purpose of the whole state coming out to vote is for us to finally determine that. Why are you presenting something to us and it's still stupid vague? So to me, I'm sitting here and you're triggering me because I'm like, yeah, I'm psyched that we the people finally get to bestow our will into the state's constitution, and yet you still kept it vague. So you and your crony assholes can still do the fine-tuning interpretation for us at the back end.
Yeah.
That I don't like.
Yeah, and it brings up a point I just thought about here. Like, presidents or certain like senators, or not senators, like presidents, governing bodies, governors have the line item veto. I wonder if you'd be able to do a line item veto. It's like you'd be able to vote on a line item veto as an amendment. We
need to do that.
That would be
the fact that is. Some would say that would be a necessary antidote to democracy.
Yeah, and I'd also be allow for the people to be able to specify, because really we just get one bill, and now it's yes or no. I vote no for.
But even then, let's just say marijuana.
Oh,
marijuana is on the ballot for issue 2.
Yes,
there were a lot of stoners. I don't know who they could be. I don't know any of them, but I would assume if I knew any of them, they'd be the first to tell you that they voted against recreational marijuana the first time it was proposed because the bill was a monopoly.
Yep.
So yes, all of you Ohioans will get to legally will legally be able to indulge in something that's nowhere near as poisonous as the thing that we sanction as a social pillar. That being said, you'll all get to indulge legally and go to your local store or deli and pick up whatever you want, just like your case of beer. But the catch is it can only come through our 2 monopoly companies.
Yep.
So all of Ohio was like, yeah, I'm just going to do it illegally.
Yep.
So we voted against it because of the BS nuance they slipped in. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with, we'll just keep saying no until you get it right, asshole. Until you get what fits the like, one, I picked you to be my representative. And you're not representing me.
Nope.
So I'm going to keep just nixing everything you throw up here until it finally reflects my will. So I'm cool with, we really don't have a finalized abortion statement in our Constitution until you perfectly articulate everything we want.
Yep.
The sad part is we're such shallow voters and we're such uneducated social members that we don't care. I just see back to the Facebook point we brought up. I just see the title. I see legalize abortion, legalize marijuana. I got what I wanted and we move on. And that shouldn't be how you vote. You should be voting on the nuance, because it shouldn't be easy to just keep changing laws. Like, this is the will of not just you, David. This is the will of all of us.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be easy. It should be something that takes at least the majority of us, 51% of us, to decide this is what's right. So I guess in closing, what I'm trying to say is, I think we should excite people in finding topics that, yes, on its surface you would vote for, but get into the weeds. Find out who's truly benefiting. When they pass a Go Green bill that's this freaking tall, and in one little line of it, it's doing something that has nothing to do with the environment. Well, one, I know you, the mechanic, don't have the time to read all of that. That's why you pick a representative that does. But we're not there anymore. We're not in a world where regular Joe Schmoes are representing the rest of us Joes. Nope. We've got crooked criminals that have their own agendas that they're trying to push. That being said, you have to grab the wheel and you need to do the work. You need to see, there's little pieces in here that don't satisfy me. So I'm going to nix it until you get it right.
Yep. Now I would push back and say you don't want to ever let perfect be the enemy of good, because then you're just going to go back to then we'll never get marijuana, then we'll never ever get the things we actually want.
And let's agree, the marijuana one ain't perfect this time, but it's close enough.
No, I'd say even reading through it, going, okay, yeah, it's
Right.
not enshrining monopolies. It may be.
It definitely limits in some ways, but there's still, but a guy can still plant it like a tomato plant in his backyard, and before you'd get criminalized for that.
Yeah.
So at least now it's like, fine, I got to go buy it from your boy, but at least I'm gonna grow my own.
Yeah, and you could apply for license. It's not just limited to a certain amount of people. It's treated a little bit more like the state does with alcohol and liquor license, where I wouldn't call it liberally giving out to individuals, but it's definitely
accessible.
There's a path in which you could realistically do it, even as a layman. So that's where I come down on issue 2. I think it's I voted yes on both. There's no secret here. I don't want to hide any of it.
What are you talking about? Not me.
Voted no on both, huh? I'll ask you this here too, because I had a couple other things on my outside of judges and city councils no one here agrees with. I had a charter school pop up on mine, and it was basically to allow the institution to be able to set up a charter school and XYZ funds would go to it. Voted that down. Said no. So I'm not. My opinion on education is very mixed on a lot of different factors. I think it takes a pretty strong community to have good education. That's why you see typically, let's get a little racy here. Why you typically see Asian households do better in like statistical tests and education more so
Harvard sounding motherfucker.
more so than maybe other households. Why is that? Because the family foundation of those individuals that just so happen to be of Asian descent care much more about the education and therefore the application of tests and such. So when you live in a community that is like that typically like what they say, when you hang you are the people you hang around with. So if you're successful, outgoing, X, Y, and Z, you're usually that's the company you usually keep, unless you're a real narcissist and you got something like that. I don't know. But when we take that to education, so when we see communities that don't value that education, like Appalachia, let's use Appalachia, for example, they don't like education. They don't trust the government. They don't trust a whole lot of institutions that do educate them. So they don't take it seriously. So therefore they don't test well on it. Maybe they're not, doesn't mean they're dumb, doesn't mean they're uneducated, but it just means I don't respect this part of the way the government's endowing this on me, so I'm not going to be good at it. Where you see other communities do that. Charter schools, I think the idea is they're going to throw money at it and they're just going to be better. If they have more control over the way they do the education, more children would be better at education. I think some charter schools initially, started off pretty well at that. And I think part of that is because communities had just a different option to go to, and that became the popular choice. So if you care about your children's education, you're going to take your children to a place where other people care about their children's education. Right. It usually just kind of falls down that line. That's why, like private school. It's why people, it's a hoity-toity thing. So the elites use private school. Yeah, part of it's because most of those people care and they drive those children to go that way. So when you see in a lower income community like Cleveland, Cleveland's a lower income community by and large. It's not, it's not Lakewood, it's not Cleveland Heights. You see that and you go, I think this is a money grabbing scheme, because it's someone selling the idea and the narrative that I'm going to put a school up and now your kid's going to be good, whether or not you care about your kid's education or not. So that's why I voted it down, and I don't really need any more taxes in my community. It's also part of it, selfishly speaking. But that was kind of my platform here on charter schools. Is they're used as a silver bullet without actually looking into what makes a silver bullet work.
Yeah,
you're shooting at thinking it's going to be great. So that's where I came up with that. And then I had a levy for something else. I didn't know what it was, so I voted it down. So that's just my thing. Did you have any interesting things on your ballot?
Honestly, no. I think because Brecksville, again, being a small, quaint, hoity-toity suburb, they get to focus on the amount of people in Brecksville that are hell bent over an abortion they're not going to have blows my mind.
Oh yeah.
Like Don. God love him. One of my favorite guests on the show. But dude, you're not having an abortion. Like at some point we need to continue. The balance is it is not a booger or how Louis C.K. You're not taking a shit. You are killing a person.
Yep.
On balance with that, you are never going to make abortions illegal. Understand that. Like,
yep.
I don't get how these people don't understand this. They will never be illegal, ever, ever. The only thing you will make illegal is safe abortions. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. So I heard this TED talk of this old lady that gave her story about when she was 16 and her dad threw her in a van, took her to this creepy house on top of a hill, and she had to go through some tragic experience. You hear a story like that, and you should, if you have any heart, just like you're going, if you have any heart, any dead baby is a bad dead baby. I agree. But what's even worse than the dead baby is a traumatized human that my social welfare is going to have to take care of. Forcing them to take care of a baby they can't handle, it's going to result in fetal alcohol syndrome, a beaten baby. Like this isn't you're forcing a life that isn't going to result in Elon Musk, a player that's been a part of our podcast today or our show. You're not the person who wanted to have an abortion and you are stripping them of the safe route to do so is not creating Steve Jobs.
It's not creating the family dynamic.
Well,
I think
you're putting it in a more sophisticated way than I did.
The family dynamic that I think a lot of the conservative-minded folks would want, and that's if you want to have a family, you're going to be better. If you want to have this, you're going to care more about making sure it's okay. If you don't want to have it, I think that's where we see a lot of these troubled individuals come from. That's where I need to push back.
Even if you don't want to have it, at some point you're not having it. Nobody's making you have an abortion. You want to have a baby, have the baby.
Yep.
But you need to reconcile this is never illegal. So you need to make it safe. And then you need to follow it up, like you said, with the Bill Clinton perspective and JB, the dead guy. You need to go and say, but it ain't ever going to be safe. It's never going to be illegal, but you should at least when it's done, it's done safely. So you're not having some PTSD victim that is trying to become a functioning member of society.
I think the more important part of that 3-word statement too is rare. You want it to be rare. You want to set up a society in which...
So you don't need bills to be passed.
Yep.
You don't need black letter law created to continue to push the dialogue of rare. That's all you can do to keep it rare, because it will never be gone. But to keep it rare and something that you mull over your mind and truly investigate is pushing the narrative rare. Like you need to be an advocate for that. We've really harped on these topics and beaten them down to a pulp. That being said, Brian's had it on the screen this whole time for the best to see, and I can't even read it. Brian, can you go through what the current status is when it comes to the election?
Yes.
Start with issue 1.
So issue 1, we're at 1,130,000 votes, and it is
what's the percentage?
58 yes, 41 no.
Boom.
That's a little higher than I thought it'd be for yes.
Yeah, well, again,
it started at like 70.
So again, that goes back to the need for August's bill. The Republicans needed to push that because that was at the 60%. It wasn't just 50% plus 1. It's 60%, which looking at the way the numbers are falling right now, they wouldn't have gotten it.
No,
correct.
They wouldn't have gotten it.
What's issue 2 looking like?
Issue 2, we're at 55% and 44% for almost 100.
Way closer than
That's
I thought.
Way closer than I thought it'd be. I thought it'd be reversed. I thought it'd be, I thought issue 1 would be a lot. It would be just on the margins.
Wait. It's 54% getting passed?
55 yes, 44 no.
Okay.
Interesting.
It's closer than I thought, but at least
it's a lot closer than I thought too. I thought this would be a runaway, like 60-some% yes, 40-some no.
That was my dad.
It's been pretty consistent.
Yeah.
as the numbers
do you
update.
see where you're at? Can you see Judge DiGeronimo? Probably not.
No, this is
Don't worry about it.
It's about, well, you got to know what your ward is.
Right.
If you look up Ward 11, Brian, see if the charter school is passed. Did I get my, yeah. But yeah, so
sorry, I'm trying to see if I can find
the issue one being it's a lot more. That's just weird. I wonder. So you said about what million, Brian, was about reported,
Yeah, just over 1 million.
and there's what 18, 20 million in Ohio.
So we got a lot to go.
If you
or
have,
is this a
well,
poor
if you have,
turnout?
I mean, you got to think about it. There, you typically on an election year, you have about half votes, so that'd be 10 million on an off election year. And this isn't even like you're not voting in any governors or such. So this is even off election year. You know, I'd be lucky. We'd be lucky to see 4-5 million. My prediction. I think this one's gonna be a little more popular because I think the special election was one of the higher turnout elections we've had in a while, even for like an off year election. This one's probably, I think it's going to land about 6.5 million total votes. You wouldn't know that by the precinct that I was in. That was the only I had in and out experience of voting. I walked right in. They asked for my ID. I gave it to them because it's not an issue having a voter ID because I am a citizen of the United States and I can vote on issues that only pertain to me as someone who lives here and pays in, and it just like is an actual citizen that has the God-given rights for this. Anyway, before we get too much on this tangent, went right in, voted. I was the only one voting. I was outnumbered by the poll workers there.
That is
and came right. And this was at 8-ish in the morning. So it's not, I wouldn't say I'm not the crack of dawn. I'm not doing anything special. And I bet probably after work voting, you're going to have a bit more people because I think it's a little bit more popular because you see, everyone's got the little voting sticker. I didn't wear, I
should have wore mine.
I didn't wear my voting sticker. I find I didn't see anyone at work either wear their voting sticker either. So I'm not sure if everyone I worked with voted or not. But I don't think my particular precinct was real hot and heavy on the voting.
I got your DiGeronimo.
What is it? I've been looking.
58 to 42 in favor of DiGeronimo.
Woo!
Oh, there we go.
We're marching down the right path.
And do we have a percentage of
bless.
votes in? This one should be fairly quick.
I'm sure he's disappointed, but we're all thrilled. You're stuck going back to work tomorrow, dude. Woo!
Did he want to lose?
I don't think he didn't want to win. The thing is, when you have grandkids and you are financially comfortable enough to where you don't need to be at a place 8 hours a day every day that's just full of drama and BS, like it's one of those, like, I'm gonna do it because I'm definitely the best suited to do it, and everybody around me thinks so. But I'd rather be at my pool with my kid, my grandkid.
Could you
like that? I think is the. I'm not speaking for the man.
You're not speaking.
He's going to be very excited. Something I'm taking in. If I was the man in his shoes, I'd be like, I now have grandkids and a big family of good people. Like all of my kids are successful and great. I've reached the end of my road. Here's what one of the clerks I work with, I had a long dialogue with her, and she goes, I work an extra half hour to hour before work and sometimes an extra half hour to hour after work. And I'm trying to communicate to her. I go, because she always tries to report herself off as like this hard work, like, I'm so great, everything. And she goes, I'm not doing it for the money. I don't need to be paid for that extra hour or 2 hours every day. And I look at her and I go, yeah, I totally agree. You really don't. At the same time, what's invaluable compared to money and everything else is your time. At the point at which you're comfortable and you don't need to sell your time to eat today, the second most valuable thing to you in an hourglass that is perpetually closing in on you, who knows when the end is? You might get hit by a bus tomorrow and you're thinking you have 40 more years.
Yeah.
The reality is, sorry, David, you actually don't make it to Friday. That being said, you might end up regretting giving all these unnecessary hours to places that didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
So the balance is, I do think he's the literal best option for the job. At the same time, though, I think the very human the inner dialogue that will never be admitted is, I need my time.
Yeah.
My beard is gray now.
Yeah. Gives him an
now
out.
It's time. Exactly.
If he loses, like, well, you know what? You could tell yourself, you can tell other people that, you know what? You can't win them all. You can't win. You know what? I think we're gonna end this on a
very much what and so I think there's definitely like woohoo, see you tomorrow.
Yep.
Like, I don't think it's like
they're back at it again.
I think it's like cool. One.
Yeah.
See you there.
So what do you so this we're getting a little election talk here. How do you think 'cause we got a pretty big election coming up next year. How do you think that's going to go? Now, I'll ask us I want two different answers. So, president candidate wise, who do you think we're going to have as a presidential candidates?
The two?
The two.
Because we're assuming that the bipartisan chokehold will win for another election and we won't have 3 or 4 options.
Correct. Well,
right?
I guess we will have 3. So our RFK Jr. did say he was going independent. So he'll be on the ticket.
Saying he's independent, but again,
he'll be on the ticket.
Here's the thing I want to push back on that comment.
Okay.
In 2016, I think we were the closest as a country to having 3 options. That's the closest we've ever been.
Okay.
Gary Johnson had 16%. Legally, he was required to only need 15% to have a legal right to be on that debate stage with the other 2 candidates. At the same time, CNN, the all holy righteous platform that we talked about earlier, because David thinks they're great and not dangerous. They literally looked at Gary Johnson and said, yeah, you do have a legal right to be on that stage, but it's our stage and we're not letting you on it. Yep. And we all looked and watched the country commit illegal fraud, and we just kept marching on. So even though he's calling himself the 3rd candidate and he is a very relevant player in the dialogue, the actual political arena will not let him play. We need to force a 3rd option. They're never going to let them play. The telltale sign where my point is officially defeated, you get to sit back and go, we beat his point. He's wrong now.
Okay. That
day will only be when there is more than 2 candidates on that stage, and or one of those 2 is not R or D. So it could be a Republican versus a Green Party. Well, then I'll happily eat crow. Serve it on a silver platter with a side of salt. I'll devour it. At the same time, though, my point stands up until the point there is a 3rd option, or it isn't one of the 2 assholes we're stuck with. Now back to the bigger point that you're actually inquiring. Who do I think will be the 2? Because I do believe we will be defeated again as a country. The 2 corporations running our country, Republicans and Democrats, will defeat us again. That being said, I fear that this asshole through 5 different trials will be the Republican candidate. It's definitely not going to be the man wearing high heels as boots. Because he's very clearly shown himself to be a shill to the system. Yeah. And Republicans definitely, like the Native Americans, have their ear to the ground, tapped into that way more than the liberals. Democrats know who's a shill, or Republicans know who's a shill for the system. DeSantis doesn't have a chance because we're very clearly aware of that. Back to Ramaswamy, right? What's the guy's name?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah, Vivek. Vivek like cake. Vivek, he's out here. I think he's saying he is literally just like a xylophone playing down my spine. He's hitting everything I want to hear. At the same time, though, he's the World Economic Forum's choice to be the next world leader. That tells me right now, you're just as much as a shill as DeSantis. I don't want you either. So that all being said, as somebody who I'm not on any team, I'm just definitely not a Democrat. That being said, I don't think there's a single Republican I'm going to be entertaining this election. So looking on the flip side, because again, though, I think it's going to be somewhere in that realm. You're going to have Trump or Trump running alongside the actual Republican candidate, right? Like the GOP might pick somebody to bring back their control, But Trump's still going to be running, and he's definitely still going to be running as a Republican. So the Republicans might be screwed with 2 candidates if they don't just bow the knee to the narcissist. If Trump actually cared about what's good for people, he would not be running. If he cared about the country.
For sure.
That being
Absolutely.
said, he only cares about himself, so
Yep.
he sure as shit is running. On the Democrat side, the dead guy will not be on the ballot.
Oh, that's a hot take.
No, I
That's
know
a hot
the
take.
dead guy running our country currently, the Weekend at Bernie's carcass, the creeper of the crypt, Joe Biden, let's go Brandon, will not be on the ballot. But the Democrats only have shit options. They've only ever had shit options. So that being said, I can't let you politically attack my shit option for a year and a half. So I'm not going to let you see the absolute dog shit I'm going to serve you until we're very close to the election. Now, like Indiana Jones with the sack of sand and the golden I think you're going to see the very quick transition. Oh no, he's brain dead. He can't run. Or it's going to happen super quick. I do think it's going to be the governor of California.
Oh, Gavin Newsom.
I think it's going to be Newsom. But if they know what's good for them, they're going to try to investigate elsewhere. But they ain't done enough things to set up the dominoes to lead us right to that road.
Yeah.
So I think in the most hellish world, it's Newsom versus Trump. What I'd love to see is people again demanding the better candidates. So I'd like to hear again, we had a live episode a couple days ago where I very quickly lost faith in Robert Kennedy.
At least with one of his topics or one of his positions.
To me, reparations is an end all be all. To me, that's one topic that you just lose me.
Okay.
As my grandmother suffered in Greece against the Nazis, and we don't get to see the Jewish reparations, we just shovel to Israel. And coming from immigrants that were only goat herders and never once owned a person, you're never going to get me willingly giving you half of my paycheck to go towards this. Like when you take half a paycheck every 2 weeks, I care about where my taxes go, and it isn't going to Timberlands, Lambos, and Louis Vuittons. Sorry. And the fact that you, in your delusion, actually think that's going to pull anybody out of a poor or difficult situation, it's just because you're ignorant and you haven't met enough people. It hurts me to say it, but so I'm not ever going to vote for a Robert Kennedy Jr., but at the same time, I'd like for him to be taken serious just so we can have more options.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be screwed.
Yep.
What do you predict?
So I'm kind of going with the opposite of what you're saying. I think Joe Biden will be the candidate on there.
Really?
I
I
think
can see it at this point.
He's got too much. The Democrats are just backing him way too much. You hear some chirping here and there, like, well, maybe you shouldn't run, but they don't want him not to run like now. Stop your campaign now. The closer we get to
Plus, you don't
November?
think the deep state loves having a guy with no opinions? They just went from a guy that had all the opinions and couldn't keep his mouth shut. Now we got a guy that willingly agrees to never talk. Don't talk because you'll only fuck it up.
Yep.
And that being said, now why would the deep state ever give that up? Why would you ever put in a Gavin Newsom who might have an opinion down the road when you could just have this guy? It's just like,
and that might be on the
hairs.
backstage because we haven't heard too terribly much about Joe Biden no longer running, or we want a primary. You hear it maybe more on the fringes of like independent media, but you don't hear that. Like CNN isn't doing anything about that anymore. They're saying, well, Joe Biden's the person, and that's who we're going to stick with. So I wonder if there's some deals in the back end. Like, all right, I just want to be a 2-term president. That's what I want to go down his legacy as. Don't screw it up for me. Don't do policies that's going to be really unpopular. Just keep it very just even keel. Don't do anything controversial, because really the later we're getting into the Joe Biden presidency, the less controversial we're getting outside of the wars. I think the wars were real controversial. Like, I'm not thinking of too many other,
like that stuff he left in Afghanistan. That would have been
wars,
been terrible for any terrorists that are going to Israel to find. Woo-wee.
Wars are, apparently the more wars you're in, the more you're highly sought after as
a lot of money.
And a lot of money.
Cha-ching.
So as far as like actual social positions, I think just going to keep it very bare minimum, just like Diet Coke. Don't do anything. Don't rock the boat. Maybe lean a little left just to appease your buddies over the unions, but still block the union negotiating power when it comes to railroads. Anyway.
And don't bring up fracking.
But I think on the Republican side of things, I don't think Trump will be the nominee. I think all this litigation, everything with the court system, we're eventually just going to come to a head. We're going to choose somebody. I think it still might be DeSantis. I think it still might be him. Because I'm not
that midget.
Yeah, that guy. He'll do a little course correction. Once we start getting people on the stage, it's eventually DeSantis and Trump have to be on the same.
America will not vote for Ron DeSantis until he walks on that stage barefoot.
He needs to own it. If he owns it, everyone's got a lot more respect for him. But now if he becomes a little shorter, I don't know. But I think just the demand for Trump is just starting to just wane. Not with his, with his disciples. I think it's fair to call them disciples. Not so much. I think they're always going to be high level on him, but your average voter, your average Midwestern voter with like 2 kids and I don't know, working like a blue collar job. All right, I'm tired of Trump. I want the other guy. I'm not going to vote for Biden, but I'll vote for the other guy. That's, I think, what we're going to lead to. And I think the more interesting part is, does this become a red wave for the Senate or the House? I don't know if anything, the Republicans might win the presidency, and that might be it. That might be it. They might just hold on to the House by like one person, and then the Senate's just going to be a draw.
We have it, but you barely have it. It's not control.
Nope, it's not control at all.
So let's get to my wrapping thoughts. I'm glad to hear how the election's coming out. I'm going to be smoking a doobie, cheering out my judge. No, now, that being said, like I was saying to all the people that agreed with me or disagreed with me, standing at the polls, greeting them as they entered, thank you for coming out and voting. That's really all that matters. Yeah. I may not appreciate your perspective or agree with how you see the world, but I'm glad you're expressing it and you're putting those opinions in a free marketplace of ideas where they can combat against mine. In that being said, I would hope that you would respect the fact that your ideas can defeat mine, right? If that's what's right. So you should also want to preserve my ability to debate you and also have those discussions. David, I'm going to wrap up the show. Do you have any wrapping thoughts when it comes to our elections? Go Cheers, Ohio.
Well, I'm happy we get to have these elections. I'm happy we're able to have the issues on this ballot and be able to go out. I think we're going to continue to see more and more activity with these smaller elections, just the sheer force of social media just pounding over the head. Boy, you better vote for these. And also we're voting for our own kind of rights and ability to be autonomous from the government. So I'm excited to see these. I'd love to see 10 more of these, be able to really go down in the weeds on some of these issues. But I think this is a step in the right direction, at least for Ohio politics. So I'm happy to see that. And I'm happy to, see the things I voted for win.
I could agree with that totally. Brian, any wrapping thoughts before I wrap up the show?
Nope. Everyone have a good week.
Hey,
all right,
guys. Thanks for joining us again. Like we say every week, we do the live show because we want to get your commentary involved in the dialogue. Again, just like on an election day, we want to have diversity of opinion and have contributions.
We had a couple good comments today. I think we need to encourage more.
That's what I want to say. I want to say thank you to People's Persons and William for joining in.
Mick Shatner.
Yeah, Mick Shatner for going in and being a little bit vulnerable and giving us some answers. Just concepts to wrestle around here. So guys, I want to continue to encourage that. Please jump into the comments next week. I hope we see you there. We do a live show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. across the platforms. You can catch us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, anything where you find your social medias. We're there and we're having a dialogue waiting for you to join. So please get involved because that's what we're looking forward to. Otherwise, you can find all of our content at our website at www.rethinktankpodcast.com. We have new content coming out every week. And like we said, you can find all of our live shows and any past episodes there as well. Find me on Instagram and across the social media as @Gergat57. But otherwise, we'll catch you at the next episode. David, where are we at?
Oh, you can find me at Instagram. Only one spot. David Cunningham 7112. I remember it this time. And Brian, where can we find you at?
Instagram, BC Mall, and yeah.
Yeah.
Peace out, people.
Yeah,
Catch you on the next episode. Peace.